Princess Lyria stood alone in the grand hall of Zephyria's crystal palace, the weight of the stars reflected in her violet eyes. She had grown up among riches and splendor, taught to command, to fight, to rule, but never to love. And now her father, Emperor Kael, stood before her with a stern expression she had rarely seen, his voice echoing off the polished crystal walls. "Lyria," he said firmly, "you are to marry a human." The words struck her like a thunderclap. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. Humans, fragile, clumsy, unpredictable creatures from a distant world, were her people's rivals in technology, weaker in strength, and utterly foreign. Zephyrians prided themselves on their grace, their power, and their perfection. And now she was being told to bind her life to one of them? "Father, I cannot," Lyria whispered, her voice trembling. "You will," Emperor Kael said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "This marriage is necessary. The humans and Zephyrians must form an alliance. The peace of our empire depends on it." Lyria swallowed hard. She wanted to protest, to storm from the hall, to scream that her feelings, her entire being, had no place in this arrangement. But the command was final, like the immutable laws of the universe. She had been raised to obey, to sacrifice herself for the greater good, and yet a fire of resentment and fear burned inside her. She tried to picture the humans she would meet. In the reports she had seen, humans were small, fragile, often panicked in crisis, their emotions uncontrolled and chaotic. Zephyrians excelled in logic, precision, and control. How could she ever feel anything for such a creature? The Emperor's eyes softened for a brief moment, and Lyria caught a hint of hope. Or was it pity? "He is not just any human," Kael said quietly. "His name is Joran. He has a strength you cannot yet see. I believe he will change your perspective. Perhaps even your heart." Her stomach twisted. Change her perspective, feelings. She had been trained to value reason, power, and duty, not emotions. Love was dangerous. Love was unnecessary. And yet a tiny spark of curiosity flickered inside her. "You leave tomorrow," her father added, dismissing the conversation. "The ship will take you to the human colony. You must learn to adapt. You must endure. Your role is greater than your personal wishes." Lyria nodded, though her mind churned with a storm of doubts and fears. She returned to her chambers that night, staring at the twin moons of Zephyria through the crystal windows. Memories of her childhood filled her mind. The lessons in diplomacy, the sword practice at dawn, the endless council meetings, but never the thought of being a bride, let alone a bride to a human. Her heart beat faster with a mixture of dread and something she couldn't name. Could a human truly be worthy of her attention? Could a creature so different, so fragile by all accounts, earn the respect of a Zephyrian princess? Sleep eluded her. She imagined meeting Joran. Would he bow properly or stumble in awe? Would he be frightened of her powers, of her authority? And yet underneath the anxiety, a small part of her wondered if he could surprise her, if he could be more than she expected. By morning, her mind was a mixture of rebellion and curiosity. She dressed in ceremonial silks, each movement precise, each fold of the garment perfectly placed, a mask of composure over the turmoil within. When the ship arrived, she took a deep breath, her fingers curling around the railing of the gangway. She did not yet know the human who awaited her, nor did she understand the journey that would follow. But as she stepped aboard the vessel, leaving the familiar towers of Zephyria behind, a single thought echoed in her mind. Perhaps in a world so vast, there is more to strength and heart than I have ever known. And with that uncertain hope, Princess Lyria's life began to change. Forever. The human colony was nothing like Lyria had expected. Its buildings were simple, made of stone and metal, lacking the elegance of Zephyria's crystal towers. The streets were narrow, crowded, and bustling with activity. Humans moved quickly, shouting to each other, carrying goods, and tending to children with a warmth that surprised her. Princess Lyria stepped carefully from the transport pod, her hands clasped tightly. Her heart pounded as she scanned the crowd. She had imagined a fragile creature, trembling at her presence, perhaps even awed, but the humans around her seemed lively, strong in ways she had not considered. And then she saw him, Joran. He stood near the center of the plaza, tall, broad-shouldered, and utterly ordinary in appearance, yet there was something in his stance, something calm and steady that immediately drew her attention. His brown eyes met hers with no trace of fear, only quiet respect. "You must be Princess Lyria," he said, his voice soft but confident. There was no bowing, no exaggerated gesture of submission, just honesty and steadiness. "I am," Lyria replied, her voice measured, though her chest tightened. "You are Joran." "I am," he said with a faint smile. "I know this arrangement is difficult. I hope we can understand each other." Lyria's eyes narrowed slightly. Understand each other? She had never met a human capable of such composure. Most would have been nervous, frightened, or overly polite. Joran, however, met her gaze evenly, without flinching, without pretending. As they walked through the colony together, she noticed how he interacted with the people around him. A child ran past, tripping over a loose stone. Joran caught the boy before he fell, smiling and gently lifting him upright. "Careful, little one," he said. The child grinned and ran off again, and Lyria felt an unexpected warmth in her chest. "This is your home?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. "Yes," Joran replied. "It's simple, but it's ours. We work hard, we care for each other, and we survive together. That is our strength." Lyria frowned slightly. "Survive? Humans seem so fragile compared to Zephyrians." He chuckled softly. "Fragile, perhaps. But fragility doesn't make us weak. It teaches us to protect, to adapt, and to endure. Strength isn't always visible." She wanted to argue, to tell him that Zephyrians had strength beyond imagining, but his calm confidence left her words stuck in her throat. For the first time, she saw a human not as weak, but as resilient. Joran led her to a modest home, where the interior was cozy, filled with simple furniture and handmade decorations. Lyria felt a strange mix of discomfort and fascination. Nothing sparkled or gleamed, yet the space felt alive, warm, and inviting. "Make yourself comfortable," he said. "I hope you'll find some peace here, despite the circumstances." She hesitated, then stepped inside. He offered her tea, and she accepted, curious to see how he conducted himself in his own space. As she sipped, she noticed how careful he was, not just with her, but with everything, placing the cup gently, speaking softly, moving deliberately. "You seem different than I imagined humans to be," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Joran tilted his head slightly, a small smile touching his lips. "Different is not always a bad thing. Perhaps you'll find that what you think you know isn't the whole truth." For a long moment they sat in silence, the faint hum of the colony outside the only sound. Lyria felt her chest loosen slightly, the tension of expectation and fear easing. She laughed quietly at something he said, a light, unpracticed sound that surprised even her. It was not awe or duty that made her smile. It was something softer, gentler, something dangerous, something she had never allowed herself to feel. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet, Lyria realized that her world had just shifted. The human she had been sent to marry was not weak, not clumsy, not insignificant. He was steady, kind, resilient, and slowly, without her permission, her heart began to stir. She didn't yet understand the emotion swirling inside her, but for the first time, she wondered if perhaps in this fragile human, she might find something worth caring about. The days passed slowly for Princess Lyria, yet each day brought new surprises. The human colony, which she had first regarded with skepticism, revealed itself to be full of warmth and resilience she had never imagined. Humans worked together, shared burdens, and faced challenges with courage that reminded her in strange ways of her own people. And through it all, Joran was always present, steady and calm, a quiet anchor in a chaotic world. Lyria had been trained to watch, to judge, to command. She had learned to see weakness and exploit it, to test strength and measure it. But with Joran, she found no arrogance, no need to prove himself. He simply existed patiently, with a kind of inner strength that she could not ignore. One morning, Lyria accompanied him to the small fields where humans grew their food. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Children ran through the fields laughing, their bare feet kicking up dust. Humans moved with purpose, passing tools, watering crops, sharing advice. "Your people seem happy," Lyria said cautiously, unsure if she was meant to admire this world. "They are," Joran replied. "Happiness comes from helping, from protecting each other. We may not be perfect, but we survive, and that is worth everything." He bent down to help a young woman carry a basket of vegetables. Lyria noticed the care in his touch, the gentleness with which he adjusted the basket on her shoulder. He did not command, did not demand, only guided and assisted. Watching him, Lyria felt a strange tug at her chest. She had never seen a man treat others with such respect and kindness. Even in Zephyrian courts, where diplomacy was taught as an art of power, she had rarely seen such patience and humility combined. Later, as they walked back to the village, dark clouds gathered, heavy and threatening. The wind picked up, and rain began to pour in sudden, sharp sheets. Humans ran for cover, but one child had tripped and fallen into the mud. Lyria's instincts screamed at her to step back, to leave it for others. But before she could move, Joran was there, scooping the child into his arms, his coat wrapped around both of them. "You're safe now," he said softly, brushing the mud from the boy's hair. The child smiled up at him, eyes shining with trust, and ran to his mother. Lyria felt an unfamiliar warmth bloom in her chest. It was not fear, nor admiration, nor simple gratitude. It was something more personal, more profound. Joran's care had stirred a feeling inside her she did not recognize, a strange mixture of awe and longing. That evening, as the rain tapped gently against the roof, Lyria sat by the fire, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. She replayed the events of the day in her mind. She had expected the humans to be weak, their world to be fragile, their lives insignificant. But she had seen bravery, ingenuity, and courage in every gesture, every small act of care, and she had seen it most clearly in Joran. He sat beside her, quiet, offering no words, but his presence. Lyria felt herself relaxing, letting go of the rigid walls she had carried for so long. She had been trained to protect herself from disappointment, from danger, from attachment. Yet now, in the warmth of a simple home, she wondered if she could allow herself to feel. "Do you ever get afraid?" she asked him softly, almost afraid of the answer. Joran looked at her, eyes calm, steady. "Of course. Fear is part of being alive. But fear doesn't mean we stop. We face it together if we can. That is what makes life worth living." Lyria's heart skipped. Together. The word was simple, yet it resonated deeply. For the first time, she wondered if she could trust someone, not a guard, not a diplomat, not a friend, but him. And as the fire crackled and the rain continued its gentle rhythm, Lyria realized something startling. Her feelings were shifting. She had come to the human world expecting discomfort, duty, perhaps even disappointment. Instead, she was finding something she had never known. A stirring, fragile emotion that felt like hope, warmth, and maybe love. The night deepened, but Lyria could not sleep. She stared out the window at the human world below, alive and imperfect and beautiful. And she thought with a quiet intensity that perhaps strength was not in wings, or titles, or power. It was in the courage to care, the patience to endure, and the willingness to open one's heart. And in Joran she had found all of it. Even as days passed, Princess Lyria could not deny the stirrings in her heart. Every time she saw Joran, whether tending the fields, helping a neighbor, or simply sitting quietly beside her, she felt something she had never allowed herself to feel. Warmth, admiration, curiosity, and something deeper, something dangerous. She hated it. Lyria had been trained her entire life to prioritize duty over desire. She was a princess of Zephyria, trained to lead, to strategize, to protect her people above all else. Emotions were a tool to be controlled, not surrendered to. And yet Joran's presence made that impossible. His kindness, his patience, his quiet courage. He stirred something inside her that refused to be suppressed. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the colony, Lyria walked alone to the edge of a small hill overlooking the village. The wind tugged at her hair and she wrapped her cloak tightly around her. She felt conflicted, torn between two worlds, the expectations of her people and the strange growing longing she felt for this human who had done nothing but show her respect and care. "You are thinking too much," she whispered to herself, though the voice sounded fragile even to her own ears. "He is a human. He cannot understand your world. He cannot belong here. Yet the thought of him, of his steady gaze, of the way he had caught the child in the rain, refused to leave her mind. Her heart ached with confusion. She had come to this world with a mission, with the cold certainty that she would fulfill her father's command. But Joran had done something she could not have anticipated. He had shown her a world she had never known, a world where strength was measured not in magic or titles, but in courage, patience, and care. That night, she could not sleep. She lay in her chamber, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment she had spent with him, every laugh they had shared, every quiet conversation, every glance that lingered too long. She felt her heart tighten and loosen at the same time, a sensation both terrifying and thrilling. The next morning, she found herself walking toward him, drawn by something she could not name. She found him working in the small garden near the house, his hands deep in the soil. He looked up, smiled, and waved. "Good morning, Princess," he said softly. "Good morning," she replied, her voice catching slightly. She wanted to speak, to ask him questions, to confess the confusion inside her, but the words faltered. Instead, she watched him work, noticing the care in every movement, the gentleness in every touch. "You think too much," Joran said quietly, almost as if he had read her mind. "You carry the weight of your people on your shoulders, but you don't have to carry it alone. Not here." Lyria's throat tightened. How could he speak so simply, yet touch the depths of her heart? She wanted to turn away, to remind herself that he was a human and she was royalty. But she couldn't. She felt herself drawn toward him, the walls she had built around her heart beginning to crumble. Later, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, Lyria faced him. Her voice trembled slightly. "Joran, I do not know if this is right. I am not supposed to feel this way. You are different, and yet—" He stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "And yet?" Lyria looked down, her fingers twisting nervously. "And yet, I feel something I have never felt before. I do not know if I am allowed to feel it. I do not know if I am allowed to want it." Joran reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "Feelings are not a weakness, Lyria. They are what make us human. And you are allowed to feel them, even if the world expects you not to." Her chest tightened, a rush of emotion she could not name. She wanted to resist, to push him away, to remind herself of her duty. But when she looked into his eyes, so steady, so warm, so full of understanding, she realized something terrifying and wonderful. She wanted to trust him. She wanted to feel. She wanted him. And for the first time in her life, Princess Lyria faced a truth she could no longer deny. Her heart was no longer hers alone. The colony faced a crisis one crisp morning. Word arrived that a group of raiders was approaching, seeking to pillage the human settlement. Panic rippled through the streets, yet Lyria watched with a mixture of fear and fascination as the humans quickly organized themselves. They did not panic, did not crumble under pressure. Instead, they worked together with a coordination that seemed almost impossible for creatures she had once thought fragile. Joran was at the forefront, his calm presence a beacon amid the chaos. He directed groups of villagers, helped children and the elderly find shelter, and even carried supplies to those who struggled to move quickly. Lyria's chest tightened as she watched him. Here was the human she had been told to marry, yet he was more than she could have imagined. Strong, courageous, and utterly selfless. "Come with me," Joran called, motioning her toward a small watchtower. "From there you can help guide people safely to the shelter." Lyria hesitated. She was trained in battle, yes, but not for this. Not against humans or raiders, especially not in this human world. Yet something inside her pushed her forward. Perhaps it was fear, perhaps it was curiosity, but more than anything, it was the quiet trust she felt in him. From the tower, she directed villagers, helping them navigate the streets and avoid danger. Her mind raced, but with each instruction, she realized that humans were not weak. They were clever, resilient, and quick to adapt. Each time she saw Joran lending a hand, shouting encouragement, or catching someone who stumbled, her heart swelled with admiration. By the time the raiders were driven off by the human defenders, Lyria was breathless and exhausted. She had never experienced anything like this. Humans, fragile as she had been told they were, had fought with courage and heart. They had protected each other not because of magic or strength, but because of loyalty, love, and the will to survive. Joran returned to her, dirt and sweat marking his face, yet his eyes shone with a calm light. "You did well," he said softly, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. You all did well," Lyria replied, her voice trembling slightly. I never realized humans could be like this." Joran smiled gently. "We are not perfect. We stumble, we fail, we hurt, but we rise, because we care. That is our strength." Lyria felt a lump in her throat. She had always measured strength in wings, in skill, in perfection. But Joran's words and the courage she had witnessed made her rethink everything. Strength was not all ways visible. It could be quiet, steady, and filled with compassion. That evening, she and Joran walked through the fields, the air calm after the storm. Lyria's mind replayed the events of the day. She realized that she was no longer thinking of Joran as a fragile human. She thought of him as someone brave, kind, and astonishingly strong, someone she could admire, and perhaps someone she could love. "Do you ever feel afraid?" she asked quietly, her fingers brushing his. "Of course," he said, glancing at her with a gentle smile. "Fear is natural, but courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite it." "You showed courage today, Lyria. You helped your people. You helped me." Her chest tightened. She had not expected to hear such words from him. She had come to this human world prepared to obey, to endure, perhaps even to tolerate. But instead she was learning lessons she had never imagined. About resilience, about heart, about the true meaning of strength. As the sun set, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and violet, Lyria realized something profound. Her heart had changed. She no longer saw humans as weak or insignificant. She saw bravery, kindness, and courage mirrored in Joran's every action. And she saw in herself a spark, a willingness to feel, to care, to trust, and perhaps to love. For the first time, Princess Lyria understood that strength was not just about power. It was about heart. And Joran had a heart larger than any she had ever known. Days after the raid, the human colony returned to its quiet rhythm. The sun rose over the fields, casting a warm glow over the bustling streets. Children laughed. Adults worked side by side, and life carried on with an energy that was both fragile and unbreakable. Princess Lyria walked among them, no longer as an observer, but as someone who felt part of their world. Her thoughts often drifted to Joran. She noticed how he moved through the colony with ease, speaking to everyone with respect and care. He did not command with authority, nor did he seek recognition. He simply acted with a strength that came from the heart. And every time she watched him, a strange flutter ran through her chest. Fear mingled with excitement. Awe mingled with longing. For the first time, Lyria realized she did not want to hide from her feelings. She had spent so long following rules, obeying commands, and guarding her heart, yet here she was drawn to a human in ways she could not control. Joran's kindness, his patience, his courage, they had broken through the walls she had built around herself, brick by brick, until she could no longer deny the truth. One afternoon, they walked together along a small path leading to a quiet pond. The water reflected the sky in soft shades of blue and gold, and the breeze carried the scent of earth and grass. Lyria's hand brushed against Joran's, and she did not pull away. Instead, she let herself feel the warmth of his touch. "Joran," she began softly, her voice trembling. I do not know if this is what my father wanted. I do not know if it is right for me to feel this way, but I cannot ignore it. I cannot ignore you." Joran stopped walking and turned to face her. His eyes were calm, steady, filled with understanding. "Lyria," he said gently, "you are allowed to feel. You are allowed to choose. You do not have to follow anyone else's rules of the heart. Only your own." Her chest tightened. She had never heard anyone speak to her like this. Not a teacher, not a guard, not even her father. His words were simple, yet they carried a weight she could not resist. For the first time she felt seen, truly seen, not as a princess, not as a symbol, but as a person. Tears pricked at her eyes, though she did not move to wipe them away. Instead, she let herself feel the vulnerability, the longing, the hope. She wanted to trust him, to lean on him, to open her heart completely. And for the first time she realized that she could. "I want to try," she whispered, barely audible. "To feel, to care. For you." Joran reached out and took both her hands in his. "You don't have to try, Lyria. You already are. And I feel the same. I have felt it from the moment we met, and I will be here every step of the way." Her heart swelled with emotion. She had been trained to expect rules, obedience, and control, yet here was a truth so simple, so powerful. Love did not require power or perfection. It required courage, trust, and kindness. And Joran had all of it in abundance. The wind rustled through the trees, and the pond shimmered in the fading sunlight. Lyria took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. She no longer feared her emotions. She embraced them. She no longer questioned whether it was right to care for a human. She chose to love him with her whole heart. That evening, as they walked back toward the village, Lyria felt lighter, freer, and braver than ever before. She had discovered a strength she had never known, a strength born not of titles, wings, or command, but of the courage to feel, to trust, and to love. And in that strength, she found herself standing beside Joran, no longer a princess bound by fear, but a woman ready to embrace her heart, her feelings, and the extraordinary human who had awakened them. For the first time, Princess Lyria smiled, not a practiced ceremonial smile, but a true, radiant smile of someone who had found the courage to follow her heart. The day of the union had arrived. The human colony was buzzing with anticipation, though many had never witnessed such an event. For Lyria, the day felt surreal. She walked beside Joran, her hand nestled in his, feeling a sense of calm and certainty that she had never known. The princess she had been, the one trained in protocol, duty, and perfection, was now something more, a woman who had discovered the courage to follow her heart. The ceremony was simple yet beautiful. The humans had prepared a modest gathering, their homes adorned with flowers and candles. Children peeked curiously from behind doors, and neighbors whispered their excitement. There was no grand throne, no crystal hall, only the warmth of a community and the quiet strength of the man she loved. As she looked at Joran, standing with calm confidence, she realized that everything her father had told her about humans being fragile was wrong. He was not weak. He was strong, not in the ways she had expected, but in the ways that mattered most: steadfast, brave, patient, and full of heart. He had changed her understanding of strength entirely. "You may speak your vows," the elder said gently, motioning for them to face each other. Lyria took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around Joran's. She looked into his eyes, seeing not just the man but the life they had shared over these months, the lessons, the laughter, the fear, and the hope. Her voice trembled, but she spoke clearly. I came here thinking this would be duty, a command, something I must endure. But you have shown me a world I never knew existed. You have taught me courage, kindness, and strength beyond what I could have imagined. And I choose you, not because I must, but because I want to." Joran's eyes softened, a smile spreading across his face. "Lyria, I have never known anyone like you. Your strength, your wisdom, your heart, you inspire me every day. I do not ask for perfection. I only ask to walk beside you, to share this life with you. And I choose you with all that I am." Tears welled in Lyria's eyes, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mix of relief, love, and pure joy. She had never expected to feel this way, and yet, here it was. Love, undeniable and true. As they exchanged rings, small bands of silver and gold, the villagers cheered softly. Children clapped, neighbors smiled, and the air felt lighter, warmer, as if the sun itself had drawn closer to witness their union. When the ceremony ended, they walked hand in hand through the village. Lyria's heart was full, not with fear or duty, but with hope and determination. She realized that love, true love, was not a weakness. It was the most powerful force she had ever known. It gave courage where there was fear, strength where there was doubt, and light where there was darkness. Joren leaned close, his voice a gentle whisper. "Together, Lyria, always, always," she replied, her smile radiant, free, and real. Later, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting golden light across the fields, Lyria looked around at the humans, at the life they had built together. She felt pride, not in titles or wings, but in being part of something greater. She had come to this world as a princess obeying a command, and she had discovered not only a new understanding of humanity, but a new understanding of herself. Strength, she realized, was not measured in power or magic. It was measured in heart, in courage, in the willingness to trust, to care, and to love. Humans had taught her that. Joren had shown her that. And together, they had found something extraordinary, a bond unshakable, a love undeniable, and a future full of hope. Princess Lyria squeezed Joren's hand, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. The stars began to appear in the twilight sky, twinkling like tiny promises. And she knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. For the first time in her life, she felt complete, not as a princess, not as a diplomat, not as a symbol of duty, but as a woman who had chosen her heart, and had been met with love, kindness, and strength beyond measure. And in that choice, she discovered the most powerful truth of all. Humans were not weak. They were extraordinary. And she had fallen in love with one who had changed everything. The end.